All right. Hello. This is David Schwartz doing a special edition of Daf Yomi, recording ahead of time because I'm not able to be there in person or able to do it Zoom at that particular time. But I didn't want to have us go a day without the Daf. And so today's Daf that we'll be doing is Daf Samach Dalid. We begin the 9th chapter of Nederim. So I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. So today we're going to begin with the concept of annulling vows. We're going to focus initially on identifying a petach, an opening for identifying what the basis of annulment will be. These openings are generally things that would have prevented the person from making the neder had the person considered them at the time. And we'll see at the end of the Mishnah that begins today a debate regarding whether these things must be things that actually could have been considered at the time of the neder, or whether they can even occur, things that were not true, that are new. And so as a result, something that is a new event, whether that also can be a basis for annulling the vow. So we pick up with the Mishnah that starts the 9th chapter of Nederim at the top of Daf Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says, Poskim La'adam Bichlod Avi V'imo, that one can use the fact that maybe if they had considered the honor of their parents before making a neder, that maybe they wouldn't have made the neder. But Chacham is saying, no, you can't do that. And Amar Rabbi Tzadok, and Rabbi Tzadok took Rabbi Eliezer's ruling a step further. That not only could you do raise the question of one's parents, but you could even raise the question of the honor of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So in Cain, in response, the rabbis respond, Ein Nederim. If you were to say that, then there really wouldn't be any concept of Nederim. So let's take a look at the Ran, the first Ran at the top of the page. So Rabbi Eliezer Omer Poskin Lo Adam Bechod Aviv Ve'imo She'omrim Lo, that we say to we say to this person who made this neder, Ilu Hayita Yodea Shemivazin Avicha Ve'imecha Al Sha'ata Kal B'Nederim. If we say to this person, if you had known that you would be embarrassing your parents due to the fact that you are taking the concept of nedarim so lightly, would you have still made the neder? And if the person says no, I wouldn't have, well, then we had identified a basis to annul the vow. So Kida Amrina, as we said a couple of about 12 days ago on Bet Amud Aleph, to Karu Rishaya, because we said that that's actually considered a wicked thing. And to Karu Rishaya Bar Tzadika, Rishaya Bar Rishaya. So Klum Hayita no there. And not only that, but the point is that even if people were to think that you were a Russia, the son of a tzaddik, maybe they'll think that as a result that you're not a Russia, the son of a tzaddik, but you're Russia, the son of a Russia, meaning that presumably they'll think that they'll think badly about your parents, given the fact that you are not supposed to be making nedarim, and yet you made another. And Lashon Achar, another reason or another approach the Ran offers to why somebody might be considered, why one might be worried that their parents would look bad as a result. That not only that basically you must have learned your approach to Nadarim from somewhere, and so presumably you've learned it from your parents, and as a result, that will show badly on them if you've made a neder. And so as a result, Rabbi Eliezer says that can be a basis for annulling the vow. And the Chachamim say not so, and not only that, but when Reb Tzadok points out that, well, then maybe we should even allow the embarrassment or the concern for the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come in, well, then Amru Lo Im Kain Ein Nadarim. There'll be no, the Ran actually adds the words Amru Lo, meaning that this is another opinion that says back, meaning namely the same Chachamim who say that Rabbi Eliezer is wrong would certainly say that Rabbi Tzadok is wrong. Kolomar afilu Rabbi Eliezer moda, and not only that, but even Rabbi Eliezer would arguably agree that this has gone too far. L'Rabbanan, that he would agree to the rabbis to bechvod hamakom ein poschen, that when it comes to the honor of God, we would not actually use that as a basis. De'im isa de posken ein nedarim, because if you were to use that as a basis to say that there's a reason for making is that a reason for not making a neder? Meaning, if you were to say to somebody, if you knew that God would be upset about your making a nedarim, would you still have made the neder? Well, of course, everybody's going to say that there's not. So as a result, there would be no nedarim. But Gemara Mefarish, my davar shebein, and with Gemara we're going to actually offer at the beginning of the Gemara two explanations of exactly what this means. My davar shebeino lebein aviv ve'imo kagon she'asram behanato, and what we're talking about is that we're going to be saying that where you say to your parents that what is this thing that is between you. So they will deal with that in a moment. That is actually later on in this Mishnah. But we'll see that. Let's just read that line and then we'll get back to this, Ron. So the Mishnah continues. Modem chachamim Rabbi Eliezer b'davar shebeino lebein aviv ve'imo. That the rabbis, the chachamim agree to Rabbi Eliezer that when it comes to something that is about your relationship with your parents, then you are allowed to use the honor of one's parents to potentially get out of the neder. And you can ask them, if you had known that your parents would be so disappointed in you as a result of your making this neder, would you have still made the neder? So the Gemara first, my davar shebeino lebein aviv ve'imo. So what will explain what it means when you say that there's something between you and your parents. So kagon she'asram behanato, that such as forbidding them to benefit from you. So that's the category that the Ran explains here. Umihu naidim askinan hacha de'ein poskim b'chvod hamakom. Now, with respect to the fact that here we've said that we can't use the ability of worrying about God's honor as a basis. Dafka b'chvod hamakom hu. It's specifically with respect to God's honor. De'ein poskim, and the reason that we do so is de'ein poskim. This is back in the Ran. We're 3 lines up in the narrow lines. De'ein poskim mishum de'im isa de poskim, because if we were to do so, ein nadarim nitarim yafa, they would not actually be properly annulled. As we'll see in the Gemara, she'ein shum adam sheya'uz panav lomar she'afilu haya yodea shehu meikal b'chvod hamakom haya noder, that nobody would have the nerve to say that if in fact one did not have the nerve to respond if asked, would you have made this vow if you knew that God would be disappointed in your being, not giving God respect by making this neder? Well, of course, everybody's going to do it. So, va'afilu lo haya nimna lekach mitchila yishaker lo markein. Even if the person honestly would have still made the neder, of course, when they're challenged with this by the rabbis, the person comes to undo the neder, of course they will say that they will lie and say that in fact they would never have made the neder in the first place, and because that's a lie, so then the undoing of the neder would not be a valid undoing. However, the Ran points out, when it comes to a single mitzvah, well, then poschen, then you are allowed to do it. So if in fact somebody were to make a vow that would somehow impact their ability to do a mitzvah, and then we were to respond to them and say, would you have still made this vow if you realized that it would result in your inability to do the mitzvah? That we do allow somebody to say that they regret on that basis, that they would not have made the vow, and so as a result, it's a mistake. The Ketinan Lakaman, as we'll see coming up in hopefully tomorrow, Poskin lo minakasov betorah ilu hayita yodea sha'ata over al lota tisan that will see that you can we can use as a basis. Did you know that you were going to violate the mitzvah of not hating your brother in your heart? So that would be okay. Klum hayita noder, would you still have made the neder? Mishum de mitzvah achas, and we can say that because this is only involving one mitzvah. Ki hanim demani tana lo chamira lahu inshi kulahai, because according to this tana, we're not going to be so, a person's not going to be so concerned about a particular mitzvah. However, when it comes to Hashem's kavod, so then they would be. Then they would lie and say that they were worried about it, even if it were not true. That a person would not, when it comes to a single mitzvah, if in fact they would have made the neder, even though they knew it was going to prevent the mitzvah, they would still say that was the case. They wouldn't lie as a result. They would just admit that, yeah, I actually would have made the neder. And that's how we can say, similarly, we'll see in a couple of days that you can also raise the question of Shabbos. And continuing on in the Ran, where it says the Yerushalmi in the last of the medium-sized lines, Hakol modim b'chvod rabo, that everybody agrees that when it comes to one's Rebbe, she'enu mamid, that then you similarly can't use that as a basis. Because if you were to say to somebody, if you knew that your Rebbe would be so upset at you that you made this neder, of course the person would never say that they would still have made the neder. They would of course say that of course I wouldn't have made it this neder. Then in fact we say that the fear that one has for one's teacher is comparable to the fear of Shemayim. Hilkach ein posken bo. So as a result, this is based on a Gemara and Yerushalmi. We would also not open in that basis. Okay, so now that we've dealt with that item, so now the Mishnah concludes by noting the second concept, which is whether or not we can use a new development as an opening to nullify a vow. So v'od amar Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer also said, posken benola, that you're allowed to use a new development in order to find an opening to annul the vow and find a basis for saying that the vow was a mistake. But the Chachamim osrin. But the Chachamim say no, that is not the case. You are not allowed to use that as an opening. So, Ketzad, what kinds of examples can we give? So, Amar konam sha'ani nene leish ploni. I say I'm not going to benefit from a particular person. V'nasa sofer, but then it turns out that he becomes a sofer, some kind of, either a sofer literally or just somebody who's a scholar. But in any event, you're going to need his services. Or he has a wedding to celebrate. And so as a result, you're going to be invited to the party and you want to be able to eat at it. V'amar, and the person says, Ilu hayita yodea shehu nasa sofer. If I had known that he was going to become a sofer, Osha hayamasi as beno bekarov, or he was about to marry off his son, lo hayiti noder, I wouldn't have made a neder. So in those cases, do we allow it, or do we say that it's not allowed because those new developments are new, and as a result, you didn't know about them at the time, and so you can't say that your neder was a mistake because of something you didn't know about and wasn't foreseeable. Well, konam lebayis, or another case, konam lebayit zesh ani nechnas, or I say I'm not going to go into this house. Or Benaz basic nest, and then it turns out that house becomes a shul. So Amar ilu hayiti yodeshu nasa basic nest lo hayiti noder. And if I had known that it was going to become a shul, of course I wouldn't have made this neder. So the bottom line is Rabbi Eliezer matir. Rabbi Eliezer says that these situations would be permitted. The Chachamim osrim, and the Chachamim saying no, it would not be permitted in these situations. So now the Gemara picks up and says, what's the basis to say, when we said that there would never be a neder, what's the basis? And there's a machlokus between Abaye and Rava. So my ein nedarim. What do you mean? What did the response, those who are giving the response in the Mishnah, that if in fact Rabbi Tzadok's concern for Hashem's honor could be used as a basis to annul a vow, that there would be no longer nedarim? So Amar Abaye, what was meant by that? Im kain ein nedarim nitrin yafe, meaning that in the end the vows would not be annulled properly. And the Ran explains, taking a look at the bottom Ran on Samach Dalet Amud Aleph in the first of the wide lines, my ein nedarim ein Amar Abaye im kain ein nedarim nitrin yafe shafilu im mitchila lo haya nimna mipnei kavod hamakom. Because even if the fact is true that the honor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not, in fact, a reason for the person not to make a neder, meaning he really would have made the neder, even if he had thought about God's honor before doing so. Lo ya'az panav b'kach lifnei hachacham. He's not going to be so obnoxious as to say that in front of the chacham to whom he is asking to try and annul the vow. V'yishaker, and he'll lie. But Yomer ilu hayita yodea lo hayita noder. If I had known that this would be so upsetting to God, I wouldn't have made the neder. So nimsa she'ein nedarim mutarin yafet, and then we'll find out that it turns out that the neder would not have been properly annulled. Umishum hachi, and as a result, moda Rabbi Eliezer l'Rabbanan. As a result, the Rabbi Eliezer would agree with the rabbis. She'ein posken lo b'chvod hamakom. That's why you can't use God's honor to annul, to theoretically annul a vow. Umiyu b'chvod aviv v'imu. But when it comes to one's parents' honor, then pligi, then Rabbi Eliezer would argue. The Rabbanan Asri, the Rabbanan would still say that would be prohibited. There's no difference between the honor of a parent and the honor of Hashem. People are going to lie about both of them. Ein adam ma'is maze. The person is not going to be so obnoxious. Hilkach ein posken, and that's why you can't use that as a basis. But Rabbi Eliezer, savar b'chvod hamakom hu de ein adam beis. It's only when it comes to God that somebody is going to be so fail to recognize that they can't be that obnoxious. About b'chvod v'imo meis hilchach posken. But when it comes to one's parents, then you could be that obnoxious. And indeed, that's probably true, that in fact, there is a sense to that people might be more obnoxious with respect to their parents than with respect to God. In the end, I will note that we poskin that you cannot use even the honor of one's parents for this, and that we in fact would follow the Chachamim in this regard. Okay, so the Rava gives a different reason for why there would effectively be no such thing as nedarim. In Cain, a nedarim nishalom l'chacham. When it says that there's not going to be any nedarim, it's because everybody will realize that, hey, every time I go to a chacham, I am always able to get out of my neder, and so as a result, I'm not going to bother with it. As we'll take a look at the Mefarish first, underneath the Rashi, which it says Rashi at the heading. So, ein nedarim nishalom l'chacham. She'omer belivo, a person will say in his heart, Mali leile chetzel chacham. Why do I need to bother going to this chacham? Lo tzrichna. I don't even need to. Devadei mutter. Who? It's everybody. It's always going to be mutter. I'm always going to be permitted to annul my vow. Dekolkach hanaahu. Because it's so easy. And so as a result, he's going to end up making himself permitted on his own. But the Torah says lo yachel dvaro. The Torah says that a person is not allowed to violate his word, and we learn from that who eino mochel, that he's not allowed to create the violation. He's not allowed to set the situation up where he violates his word, meaning he can't undo his vow unilaterally. But others could annul a vow, namely a chacham or a beis din could annul a vow. And the Ran asks here, well, 1 second, based on this explanation that Rava offers, the Kashilan, third line down and second to last word on the line, the Kashilan imahai taima moda Rabbi Eliezer b'chavod hamakom. if this is the reason that Rabbi Eliezer allows, would agree that you can't ask about the honor of God. Why is he arguing when? Why would he agree that when it comes to the one's parents, one can use that as a method? You could be worried about this same reasoning in that situation. The Efshar Desvirole Rabbi Eliezer de Ikin Nederim de Kili Kule Hai She'ain of La Aviv Vilaimo Zilzo Behen. No, because there are certain vows that may be such that would not actually cause any embarrassment to one's parents, and therefore it would not be a reason to undo the vow. So v'hani leike lemiftach behu b'chlod aviv. And so as a result, hilkach kaven to kol nedarim lo sagi lehu b'hai pitcha b'nedarim. And so since when it comes to the respect of one's parents, that will not result in every vow being annulled. As a result, desagi lehu nami poschen kedemaskina bishmais. So as a result, it will be he can do it, and the person will still need to go to a chacham because of that situation. The Rabbanan Svira Lahu De'im Isa the Postin Lakul the Nidri Sagi the Im Kain Ein Nedarim Nishal Lachacham Hilkach Bakulo Ein Pasta. Whereas the rabbis would say that it still covers a lot of them, and so as a result, that would be a problem, and we wouldn't want somebody to avoid making a neder. Avoid going to have his neder annulled because he thinks, oh well, I've always gotten my nedarim annulled, so therefore I don't have any problem. Therefore I can do it on my own. Okay, so that is the machlokas between Abaye and Rava, and now we're going to try and bring a proof in our Mishnah to support Abaye, but we will in the end be unsuccessful. Okay, so the Tanan we learned in our Mishnah, Umodim Chachamim Rabbi Eliezer, that the Chachamim agreed to Rabbi Eliezer. This is the very end of our Mishnah, where we said, the end of the first discussion in our Mishnah, B'davar shebeino levein aviv ve'ima, when it comes to something between the person who made the neder and his parents, so sheposkin lo b'chod aviv ve'ima, then you are allowed to use that parent's honor. So Bishlam ala Abaye, it makes sense according to Abaye that im kain ein nedarim nitarin, that if that's the case, he's concerned that nedarim will no longer be annulled properly. It all makes sense, because why? Dahacha kevan ichatzefle ha ichatzefle. Look, this person, has got chutzpah, right? He's already made a neder, for example, for forbidding his parents to benefit from him. If he's that obnoxious to forbid his parents from benefiting from him, he may very well be obnoxious enough to say that, in fact, even though this making of the neder is an embarrassment to his parents, he still would have made the neder. And so if, in fact, he says that, if I had realized that my parents would be be embarrassed about this, I would not have made the neder, we will believe him. Ela Rava, but when it comes to Rava, to Amar im kain ein nedarim nishan lechacham, hacha amai poskin. Well, 1 second. If the concern is that if we allow this as a basis, if we allow the question of one's parents' honor to serve as a basis for annulling the vow, we're worried that people will stop going to rabbis and to Beit Din in order to avoid the neder. So then why should we allow it in this case? Even if the parents are relevant to the neder, we should be worried that if we allow a neder to be opened and annulled as a result of the honor of the parents, maybe the person will stop going and asking about annulling other vows because he knows that it's so easy to have a vow annulled. So the Gemara answers, Amre kaven dechol nidre lo sagilahon delav chacham hacha nami postin. No, because when it comes to other situations, because it's only in this situation that only when it involves a matter that relates to the parents. So in general, he needs to go and have his vow annulled. So he'll realize that here too he needs to have his vow annulled directly. He's not going to realize that this is a specific case, and he'll realize that he has to come and annul every vow, even those that relate to his parents. Okay, so that brings us now to the two dots on Samach Dalid Amud Bet. And the Gemara is now going to consider the second debate in our Mishnah, namely the debate regarding Nolad, a new development. And so Va'od Amar, as we quoting the beginning of that debate, Va'od Amar Rabbi Eliezer poskim benolad. So again, Rabbi Eliezer said that we can use a new development to annul a vow and say that vow was unintentional or was a mistake. So, but the Chachamim said no, not so. And here actually we can note, if we take a look in the third of the widest lines of the Ran. The Ran gives the explanation of a Chachamim Osrim Mishum de Pesach de Shchiachu de Mashui leg Lindor Neder Tos Aval Nolad Lo. That when it comes to the Chachamim, when do we allow an opening? We only allow an opening with respect to something where you can say that it was actually a mistake in neder. He made a mistake by making the neder. But when it comes to a nolad, you can't really say that was a mistake at the time. Obviously, in retrospect, it was a mistake. But knowing what he knew at the time, it was not a mistake. And so that is the basis for the Chachamim saying that nolad cannot serve. Whereas Rabbi Eliezer says, no, it doesn't make a difference when you realize it's a mistake. But let's take a look and see that Rabbi Eliezer also has a scriptural source for saying that we can use a new development to undo something. My time at the Rabbi Eliezer. So what's the reason of Rabbi Eliezer? Meaning, it makes a lot of sense with respect to the Chachamim to say that, as long as you can say that it's not that it's a mistake at the time, then you can undo a vow. But when it comes to something that didn't happen yet, how can you say that was a mistake at the time? It was, at the time you used your best information. So that's why we're asking specifically with respect to Rebbe Eliezer. And so Amar Rav Chisda says, to Amar Kro, we actually have a pasuk. And in order to understand this, we're going to need a little bit of background. That when the Midrash says that when Moshe ran away to Midian from Egypt after killing the Mitzri who was beating on a Jew, and when he then had seen two Jews fighting, and he tried to stop them from fighting, and they said, "Are you going to treat us like you treated that other guy, the Mitzri?" And therefore he knew that it was out that he had actually killed somebody, and so he ran away. When he was there, and he saved Sipporah and her sisters at the well, and Yisro became his father-in-law. So before Yisro gave his daughter Sipporah to Moshe, he said to Moshe that you need to swear that you're going to stay here in Midian and not go back to Egypt. And Moshe thought to himself, of course I'm going to stay here in Midian. I can't go back because I am wanted, for a capital crime. So with that as background, so now we can look at the pasuk that is cited here. To Amar Kra, because the Torah says, Ki mesu kol ha'anashim, that Hashem tells Moshe that he can return because all the people who had wanted him dead have died. So as a result, it's clear that what has happened, something that was not, was a new development. These people had died. This death is a new development. So mikan sheposkim benolad, and so as a result, from the fact that God uses the fact that the people had died as a basis for Moshe to get out of the vow that he had made to Yisro, we see that you can undo a vow based on a new development. Well, that sounds like a decent proof. So v'rabbanan my taimayu. So how do the rabbis deal with this proof? So kasavri hanu mimaisi. So they say, did these people really die? Meaning that again, we're referring to Dasan and Aviram. Then what happened to them? V'ha amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. That Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Kol makom shenemar nitzim v'nitzavim. First of all, we have to just note that when it comes to fighting or standing, that anytime that's involved, that is talking about Dasan and Aviram. And so as a result, when we're talking about the two people who were fighting, two Jews who were fighting that Moshe tried to stop, that was Dasan and Aviram. And not only that, and also later in the Torah, but in any event, so now, and what happened? And Ella Amar Reish Lakish, and Reish Lakish explains, that they actually had become poor. They had actually lost all of their possessions and therefore had lost their influence. And so as a result, the fact that they, even though it said that they had died, they hadn't actually died, but rather they had lost their possessions. And given the fact that the Gemara has reference, and by the way, the Rush asks the question, we take a look in the second to last lines of the Rush, it's the very, very bottom of the page. Ella kid amar Reish Lakish sheyardu minachseihem, v'kevan de aniyim hem, because they were aniyim, lo hayicholim lahazikon. They wouldn't be able to damage Moshe any longer. She'ein divreihem nishman, that they wouldn't be heard, as we see even in today's day, that often in order to have influence, you need to have wealth. Anios lab nolad hu dishchiach. And the end of that Rush points out that when it comes to poverty, that is not an unexpected development. That happens on a regular basis, that people become poor. And so as a result, that would not be proof to Rabbi Eliezer's position. Again, Rabbi Eliezer says that being he was using this as a basis to show that a nolad, a new development, is an okay basis to undo a vow. But for the Chachamim, this is a new development, but it's foreseeable, and so as a result, it does not count as a new development that is not predicted. So, having noted the fact that the loss of possessions is equivalent to death, so now the Gemara cites other things that are equivalent. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Kol Adam she'ein lo banim chashav kameis. That specifically, Rabbi Yoshua notes that anybody who lacks children is considered as if they're dead. Shenemar, as Rachel says to Yaakov in a few weeks ago's parsha, Havalivanim the imei ayin mesa nochi. That give me children, because if not, I'm dead. Vitanya, and we have a brisa, arba chashuvim kameis, that there are 4 categories of people that are considered like they're dead. And ani, mitzora, vesuma, umisha ein lo banim. A poor person, a mitzora, somebody who has tsaras, a blind person, and somebody who lacks children. Ani diksiv kimesu kol hanashim. They're citing the verse in connection with where Hashem says to Moshe that the people who wanted you dead are dead. So as a result, that's the proof that a poor person is considered like a dead person. Mitzora, when it comes to a Mitzora, diksiv, because what did Aaron say to Moshe after Miriam got Sarat? Al not to hikameh, don't let her be like a dead person. Bezuma, and a blind person, diksiv, because we have in Eicha, it says that b'machashakim hoshivani k'meisei olam, that when it comes to those who are in dark, that they are like people that are in that are dead. And so as a result, that comparison of being placed in darkness with being dead shows that somebody who is blind is also considered as if they're dead. Umisha ein lo banim, and then finally one without children. Diksiv hava li banim ve'imayin mesa anochi, as Rachel had said, the pasuk that we cited earlier. So tomorrow we'll pick up with Samachay. It'll also be a pre-recorded lesson, but look forward to teaching. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope that we'll be able to continue our learning and continuing doing the daf even when we are on vacation. So have a wonderful day, and I look forward to learning together again tomorrow.